I'm Carol Steen. I have colored pain. It's shaped and it moves. And I discovered it during acupuncture. A lot of people say, well, acupuncture, they stick needles in you. Obviously, that must be painful, but it actually isn't. And then they say, well, why did you have acupuncture to begin with? Well, we had lived on the Bowery in New York City, and we lived next to a display cabinet manufacturer who was illegally venting hydrocarbons and toxic chemicals, adhesives, into a common air shaft. And when you get sick, you think you're the only one who's sick, but everybody in the building and everybody in the buildings joining this air shaft, they were all sick with symptoms that you just couldn't go to the doctor and say, you know, I have this, and the doctor would say, oh yeah, well that means you have this. Even the cats were losing their hair. And so Western medicine was useless. It couldn't diagnose, it couldn't treat. I was desperate, and I was close to dying. So I went to acupuncture, and they immediately figured it out that systemically I had been poisoned. And so through a long series of treatments, I started to get better. And in the process, I discovered that when she put the needles in, I saw color. And after 6 months of treatments, I finally fessed up. I said, well, acupuncture, I see color. Don't tell me about the meridians because I don't want to have expectations. If I know anything, I'll start thinking I should have a particular reaction. I don't want that. And then I would go home after a particularly vivid session and quickly try to paint whatever it was that I saw. So I started to document what was happening. For me, like other synaesthetes who have colored pain, the pain can be used diagnostically, and I find that it happens that you get the color before you get the sensation of pain. So Lauren has colored pain, and Aurora has colored pain. So you guys should tell your stories.
You go next.
I don't have color pain, so you should go.
Okay. So I also have color pain synaesthesia, and it might also be known as like form pain too, maybe, is kind of how I think about it as well. Carol, a lot of what she says I feel in terms of how it manifests within kind of like the timing of it and whatnot, but I also think of mine as in forms too, and so the images that I showed at the panel were brightly colored, either orange or blue images, and the orange images are much, at least I think, are more nerve related. So like one of the examples, the first one I had given was I was having a dermatological surgery and where they just numbed the area where it was happening, and they didn't numb the area enough, so once she hit the area that wasn't numb, I had like a claw of orange pain kind of like hook into the front of my head, come up the back and then hook into the front. And having already been synaesthete and aware of synaesthesia, I knew it was synaesthesia, so that was my first kind of like awareness of it 4 years ago. Ever since then, the only time I have it is when it's the extreme of pain as opposed to like a progression of sensation leading up to it. So one of the things I'm currently wondering and trying to work through is if I'm only ever feeling extremes of pain, or and then everything else is a sensation that I'm able to deal with, or if there is a spectrum of pain for me, I guess.
And yes, I only have like mirror pain synesthesia, so I don't have, it's not connected to color, unfortunately. I think it would maybe make it prettier. But I discussed the condition with CC, and she was very helpful because she was able to tell me like the strategies she developed to like cope with her pain, and because she has like had so much like experience, and like she's been doing such a like profound and like long introspection, she was able to really help, and I'm really grateful for that, and I really wish there could be like a mirror pain community, and like with people who could share about their experience so that we can all like grow and and heal together. I think it would be something beautiful that I would like to maybe put together one day.
Yes. Okay. And the mirror touch. I thought you spoke also about the mirror touch.
Yeah, but like mirror touch to me is like extremely faint compared to my experience of mirror pain. So I'm not sure I would be the best person to talk about it. I do feel mirror touch, but for some weird things only. Like Jamie will often take the example when he talks about mirror touch about if you caress your cheek, I will feel it, but I don't feel that. I just feel like things that are disagreeable to me. Like if I see someone touching velvet, for instance, velvet to me is very it's a horrible material, and so if I see someone touching velvet, I feel it cutting my fingers. But that's all. I don't really have mirror touch apart from that.
Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for spending some of your lunchtime with us. We're very excited to have a workshop discussion on pain synaesthesia. So how we're going to start, unfortunately, as you know, CC Hart couldn't be here, but we do have a video from her, and I think she better kind of introduces this topic than I could. So I'm chairing in her place. My name is Janet Bultitude, and I'll introduce myself later on. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with each of the panelists briefly sharing their perspectives or insights into pain synaesthesia. And then we have some time after that to have a broader discussion including everybody, where others can share their insights and perspectives, ask questions, we can explore the meaning and what can be gained from a better understanding of pain synaesthesia. So first I'll show this video that CC prepared for us.
Hello all, my name is CC Hart. I'm an artist and author and a neurodiversity advocate. I'm sorry that I can't join you today at Oxford Somerville College for this wonderful conference, but I'm grateful to the ASA and the UKSA for hosting this event and for providing us with this opportunity to talk about pain and synaesthesia. I have multiple expressions of pain synaesthesias that include pain that yields color, shape, texture, and pattern. I'm really excited to have this chance to hear a dialogue and to hear all of your contributions to this topic that I feel is underexplored. I wanted to be there with you today to talk about pain synaesthesias because it seems like they don't get quite as much attention as I think probably they should. I'm incredibly grateful to Carol Steen, Janet Bultitude, Jamie Ward, and Lauren Bierly for stepping in at the last minute to be there on this panel. I will be with you in spirit and also looking at the recording that my friend Simon Van Wees will get to me so that I can see how the conversation unfolds. Hopefully there'll be a productive dialogue and some fruitful input on what it means and how we can think about pain as an inducer for synaesthesia, especially with concurrents that are things like color, shape, texture, pattern, but maybe something more. So thank you so much for being here. I wish I was there with you. It's very hard for me to record this message and to not be present, but the next conference, hopefully I will. Thank you so much for giving attention to what I feel is a very important topic. And let's see what everyone has to say. Be well. Bye.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with CC's work, among other things, she's an artist, and these are pain forms, which are three-dimensional representations of her and other people's pain. So hers is the top one, the pink one. That's how she experiences the pain in her shoulder. So I'll step aside so that Carol can set up the next part. So the next speaker or panellist that we'll hear from is Carol Steen, who you've already been introduced to earlier.
Hi. So I have colored pain, colored touch, and I discovered that I had synaesthetic reactions to pain and touch about 40 years ago. I was very sick. I had some odd symptoms that caused Western medicine to just completely be befuddled. But I found that Eastern medicine was able to figure out what it was. Some of you have heard about the chemical poisoning called Gulf War syndrome, where you have an odd collection of symptoms, generally about 20, that don't go together in any known illness. And in the same way, I had been poisoned, and I was very close to dying. So, my default color for pain is orange, but each body part and type of pain has its own color. And I discovered that during acupuncture, when the needles were in place, that I was able to see colors. I could tell where the meridians were, and I had an agreement with my acupuncturist: don't tell me the meridians, and don't tell me what colors you think that they are, because they said the acupuncture points were first discovered by the colors, because I don't want any expectations. And it took me about 6 months before I would tell my acupuncturist that during treatment I was seeing colors, and the colors had shapes, and the shapes moved. So, when the needles go in, I might see something like this, and then it would explode. And then it might diminish, but there were many other things that would happen at the same time. And I would run back and I would paint what I saw. So these are all shapes that move, and you can't show movement except by animation. When I would get a flu injection at the doctor's office, I would see things like this. And a tetanus shot was particularly painful, but particularly attractive. I'm not a synaesthete who likes to have pain. I just happen to record what I see. This is what a headache looked like to me. It was approaching a migraine, which I unfortunately don't get. So the colors tell me things about my body. These things are true. They're accurate. The colors come first. My knee is yellow. Well, that's because I have bursitis in my knee, obviously, yellow. I use these things diagnostically. I've used it for many years, and I've even gone to a dentist with a tooth that wasn't yet painful but was glowing orange. I told him it needed a root canal, and he said, well, is it sensitive to cold? No. Heat? No. Pressure as he tapped on the tooth? No. He said, well, why don't you go home, and if it still bothers you, come back and we'll do a root canal in a couple of weeks. Well, I'm afraid of dentists, and it took all my courage to get there. And if I'm going to be there and in the chair, I'm not leaving. So at that time, they would wall off whatever tooth, and they would put everything that they owned into your mouth, something to suction, something to protect transfer of germs, whatever. The point was, I could not speak. And I had offered him the worst logic that I'd ever offered anybody in my life for why he should do this. But I said it with passion. I said, well, if you do a root canal in this tooth, I promise it will never need another one. Okay, so he went ahead and he did it, and he gets into the canal, and he stops and he says, I've got everything that he owned in my mouth and I can't say anything. And 30 seconds later he said, you're right. He said, the nerve isn't dead, but it is dying. This tooth needs a root canal. So this is Lauren's work. Lauren, maybe you'd like to come and talk about it?
Hi everyone, I'm Lauren Bierly. I'm an artist, and I'm also an exhibition project manager at Brooklyn Museum in New York City. And I am a synaesthete, and I experience color pain, synaesthesia, and color shape. So a few years ago, I think it was in 2020, I had this sensation happen. I was in the middle of a dermatological surgery, and they didn't numb the area entirely as they probably should have. And when they hit a certain point, I had an amazing claw of color come up and over my head. So that's what you're seeing here. My mind space, or what I refer to as my mind space, is black. So all the images you'll see here are on a black background to just show kind of the experience I'm seeing, but really feeling. This is in the middle of a migraine. So after I had that first experience, I was aware of it. I was like, oh, this is synaesthesia coming through. And so I thought I would tune into other moments of pain kind of moving forward. And so as I had a migraine, Carol had shown my hypnagogic vision here. And so I was laying on the couch trying to get myself to sleep, just because that's what helps my migraines. And in the middle, I had both of these sensations as I put my hand on my head over my left eye. And so you're seeing that the pressure of my hand on my head is what created that yellow orb. And these are all moving, that's why they kind of have other shadows to them. This one's a little more recent. This is a result of a physical exam with a gynecologist for endometriosis. And then this one is most recent, and I had been doing physical therapy for a hamstring injury from overuse during like running and yoga. And I had done several sessions with the therapist, and then suddenly had a nerve kind of like triggered, and so my whole leg was growing or glowing this kind of like orange color. So that's my experience with color pain.
Okay, we're going to do a quick computer change.
Oh.
Sorry about that. So while I'm setting this up, I'll see how well I can multitask. My name's Janet Bultitude. I'm a cognitive psychologist. There we go. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Bath, and I I'm a pain expert. So I study cognitive and sensory changes in chronic pain. And the people who I study for my research experience all sorts of sensory anomalies and have very multisensory descriptions of their pain. And part of what I do is test things like their visual sensitivity, or the pain that is created for them from visual stimuli, or the pain that is created in their painful limb from things like auditory stimuli. And they report things like experiencing pain as a result of smell and things like this. These people, although I have, to be fair, I haven't asked every single one of them, to the best of my knowledge, the people who I work with aren't people with synaesthesia. This is something that's acquired as part of their chronic pain experience. But as a cognitive psychologist, I certainly knew about synaesthesia, and so I became interested in understanding what the experience of multisensory pain is for synaesthetes, and what is out there about pain synaesthesia. As CC said, there's very little about pain synaesthesia, certainly in the research literature. There are bits and pieces, but not a lot. So I ran a survey which many of you kindly distributed and answered. So if you took part in this survey, thank you very much. And I don't want to take up too much time, but I am going to tell you some very basic, some brief results. I'm not sure if you can read it, but I asked about 3 different types, or 3 different ways, broadly speaking, that I thought pain could be involved in synaesthesia. So this first one up here is where a person's own pain is their inducer, and this circle represents all the people who said that yes, that's true for them. This one here is where others' pain are the inducer, so that includes mirror touch synaesthesia, but also, mirror pain synaesthesia, but also just anything where people might have a concurrent that accompanies viewing another person in pain, and that's this circle here. And this one here is where pain is a concurrent, so something that like vision or sound triggers the sensation of pain. And this Venn diagram shows that there were 25 people who had experienced all 3 kinds of this pain, and there were, this synaesthesia, but then there were some people who only reported 1, so that's these ones here, and then there were some people who only reported 2. So there's some overlap, but these can be separate as well, or some people have all 3 of these. And we don't have time to go in it, but I think a logical question to ask is what is triggering these pains, or what are the concurrents, what are the inducers? So for example, down here where pain is a concurrent, a lot of people said that that's seeing someone else in pain is what causes their pain, and that's actually these people that overlap in here. That's the people who are seeing other people's pain as the inducer. I'm not explaining this very well, but hopefully this makes sense. I'm happy to go into more detail if you want to come and talk to me. And 38.8% of these people also had a chronic pain condition. You might be surprised to hear that, but this is actually pretty much the prevalence of chronic pain in the general population. Most people are surprised to hear that it's that high, but unfortunately chronic pain, which is terrible, does pretty much exist in this kind of level of prevalence. So one of the things I was interested in understanding, aside from just what is out there, is does having synaesthesia around pain change other aspects of the pain experience? Now, in the chronic pain world, what we know absolutely is that pain intensity is not a very good predictor of how well someone is doing with pain. So if I ask you, if you're in pain and I say rate it from 0 to 10, the number that you give is not a very good predictor of how much that pain is going to disable you and affect your ability to live. It's these sorts of other things that are better predictors of how well you will be able to continue your life as usual if you have something like chronic pain. So I've got all the definitions here, which I won't read out, but it's things like the extent to which you're worried about pain, the extent to which you notice pain and kind of get distracted by it, and it stops you from concentrating on the things that you want to do. So I asked the people in the survey to do all these scales, and I also had people without synaesthesia as part of this survey. And so I'm going to give you some very quick results that are comparing people who had any kind of pain synaesthesia to the people who had no pain synaesthesia. And then also some brief results which are looking at how people who only have one type of synaesthesia, if they're different on these scales. And I'm really sorry to anyone if this creates a synaesthesia clash to you. I didn't know how to represent these different groups nicely without using colour. So the first thing I found is that people who have pain synaesthesia have lower levels of pain catastrophizing and pain anxiety than people who don't have pain synaesthesia. So I think this is really interesting, and I'd be interested to hear how people with pain synaesthesia, if they feel like this is true for them. So what I think this might mean is that people with pain synaesthesia are better able to make sense of their pain and understand their pain, and therefore don't get as anxious about it, or aren't as likely to get as anxious about it as people without synaesthesia. So there might be some kind of protective mechanism going on there. But if you take just the people, I just want to really emphasise here that this analysis is just on people without chronic pain. I felt that was kind of an easier thing to try and grapple with. So if you just take the people who have synaesthesia, so we're ignoring the people without synaesthesia now, and if you just compare people with the 3 different kinds of synaesthesia, what I found is that the people who reported that their own pain was an inducer of pain, their own pain was an inducer of some other concurrent, they scored significantly differently on these 2 scales compared to the others. They actually scored, I have that they scored lower, but they scored higher, so I've got a little bit of an error here. So they scored higher on these 2 measures. So these 2 measures are to do with how much pain distracts you, interferes with your ability to do things, and how much you notice pain. So it makes sense to me, or it seems to make sense, that people who have some kind of concurrent that accompanies pain find that a bit more distracting and are a bit more aware of their pain than people who have other kinds of synaesthesia. So that's my very brief results, and I'd be interested in hearing what people have to say about it. And with that, I'm going to hand over to a late addition to our group, so it's Aurore. I'm messing up here with pronunciation. We invited, give me a moment. We invited Aurore to join us because of her experience with mirror pain. So Aurore nicely summarised this yesterday, but maybe you could briefly remind people of your experience with mirror pain.
Hello again. So yes, I joined very lately, so I haven't prepared anything. But the thing I thought I would share was when I was sitting here, I had a moment where I was overwhelmed with like a feeling of like guilt and shame, because you know, when you talk about pain and you're not physically in pain, it's hard to like not have like a imposter syndrome and feel like, yeah, actually I'm going into pain, and it's like okay. And but I was talking with Greg yesterday about that, and I think the thing that helped me the most to like get over how much pain I have to handle every day is actually acknowledging that I have mirror pain and it's okay. I don't have to feel guilt or shame about it. It's like that's the way my brain works, and it took like decades to get there. So I just wanted to say that I'm extremely grateful that we're having this conversation, because I think it's very important for all the people with mirror pain, because it's a thing and it's good that we talk about it and make it more known and normal, I think normalized. And I'd be happy to share about like my experience as a mirror pain synesthete, and if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Okay, and our last panellist is Jamie Ward, who, can you just come up? Oh, you're doing that? Okay. So Jamie will introduce himself and his perspectives on chronic pain, synesthesia.
Yeah, so most of my research has been studying what Aurore is describing, which is mirror pain, which we could think of as really being a constellation of symptoms. So typically if you see pain on somebody else and you feel it on your own body, the chances are you might have the same thing with seeing touch and maybe other things like emotions. You know, if you see somebody's, we think their heart's racing, you might try and mirror that. It can differ a lot in terms of severity. You might imagine, well, if you see somebody having an accident, this must be completely overwhelming. When we ask people who we've categorized as mirror pain on a 0 to 10 scale what the pain is, they typically give an answer about 3. Whereas I'm sure the people in the videos that they're watching are, you know, a lot more than that. So it can be like a pale echo of pain. It's but it is there. They use the word pain, even if you give them something like tingling or whatever, that they will gravitate towards that word. It's not that I'm just suggesting it to them. If I give them a list of options, they will go with that. People debate whether it's really a type of synesthesia. Again, all I can say is that it's not something that everybody has. Some people clearly have it and others don't. Everybody might be empathic, but it doesn't mean that they behave like this. And certainly if you ask people with a well-recognised type of synesthesia like grapheme colour, we can show that the prevalence of this kind of thing is far higher, which suggests that they go together. But there are other groups that seem to have this, and again, maybe differently. So we've looked at it in people with amputees. So if you have your leg amputated, if you see somebody else in pain, you might feel something on your amputated limb. But again, it's not necessarily mirroring. So if you see somebody having a hand injection, you might say, ouch, but I'm feeling it on my leg that isn't there. So it's almost as if a part of your body that's in pain can act as a centre of gravity for these vicarious experiences, and they don't always map in this one-to-one fashion.
Thanks. Is this on? Does this work?
No.
Oh. And can you hear us? Oh, there's a button on it. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Okay. So to get the wider conversation going, I'd just like to ask the audience who here has some form of pain synesthesia. So many people. And who here, of those muggles out there like me who don't have synesthesia, who here would say that they have a, you know, if they chose a colour to represent pain, they have a pretty confident idea of what it would be. So these are the non-synesthetes. Yeah. So put your hand down if it's not sort of in the red-orange spectrum. Yeah, so I think there are also some very strong sensory, perceptual contingencies in the sort of non-synesthetic population as well. So we're inviting questions or comments from the audience now. Does anyone have any perspectives of their own they want to share about pain synesthesia, or any questions or curiosities? Yeah. And maybe if you just try by like projecting so the whole room can hear what's in.
I can project.
Yeah.
I just want to say I had a chat with Aurora yesterday, a lady who's got a poster out there explaining mirror pain. So I just had a chat with her because I've always had what I call sympathetic legs. So what you were talking about, anybody talking about their physical pain, I would get a very painful physical sensation in my legs, but nowhere else. So I'm not a synaesthete. So I don't see colours or see shapes or hear sounds. Literally, I've got what I call empathetic legs. And it's always been there, and I don't know why. But I just feel it in my legs. That's it.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Some of my results, the people who reported that other people's pain induced pain in them, it wasn't necessary. Some people said it was in the same body location, but others said it was in a different body location. My understanding of Aurora, of your poster, is that you feel that it's matched to different body locations according to what it is, right? So if you
Yeah, I feel, most of the time I feel exactly where I locate. So as you said, if it's a leg, my leg hurts a lot. But for the things that are not fathomable for my brain, for like, for instance, falling from a building, it's so like unbearable and overwhelming that I just feel it in my belly, around my belly button, and it's just like, it's like a punch in the belly. And it's like that for everything that I haven't experienced myself. It's like something that I've like had for instance, like a broken like finger. I know exactly how it feels. But Jamie, you were saying it's like in a letter form, and for me, I think it's sometimes like bigger because I put empathy around it. Yeah. So I'm imagining like what the person must be feeling, and so it adds like layers, I think, of like pain and like that are not there. So I have to like really fight to like break them down and like not fall into an imaginary world of pain when the person is actually okay and I'm not, which is like...
I think the prior experience is also interesting. So one anecdote I've got is somebody who never really had those experiences when they see somebody giving birth on a movie until she had given birth herself, and then all of a sudden you've got almost a memory of that you can relive. She did feel something, and I don't know how that works, but again, having some experience of what something is like almost certainly matters.
So just before we take another question, I just wanted to quickly refer to something quickly about Carol's, which I found really interesting, which was how you use your pain diagnostically. Lauren, do you have that as well? And then maybe other people in the audience can say if they've used it, have used that. Synaesthesia diagnostic learning.
Yes, so after talking to Carol about the pain sensations I was having, the leg pain was definitely like, okay, this is like a nerve thing. So for me, the color orange is what is a nerve pain, whereas like the blues are more of like muscle pains, essentially. So I'm able to kind of like diagnose if that seems a little extreme, but if I'm able to say like what it might be, it's based off of those colors.
And anyone else use their synaesthesia diagnostically? Sorry, did you have a question?
Yes, I was just going to ask if you have other forms of synaesthesia, if always, I know Carol has many different forms, but if color pain synaesthesia goes along with other forms or if it's unique.
Yes, I have lots. Primarily, I focus on graphing color because it's something I use in my artwork, but also time space is a big one for me. So a lot of my artwork is like the discussion with, I think it was Helena earlier today, around movement. I consider movement time and space, and so a lot of my artwork is more three-dimensional for that reason. And then I'm finding out this weekend there's possibilities I have other things too. So, but those are the three forms that are most prominent.
There were some other questions or comments at the front. Yeah, Micah?
My question is for Aurora. I wanted to ask, can you describe how your own pain and the mirror pain from other people is different in its like quality? I imagine it's different.
Yeah, I think my own pain is more physical and other people's pain is more like emotional. It hurts like, it sounds a little dumb, but I think it hurts my soul. Like, feels like I'm connected to like people, and when I see them hurt, it feels like something in me is like hurting so profoundly for them. So like to me, it's really hard to know like if it's like just extreme empathy or actual mirror touch. And mirror pain, I still don't know, but I've never met anyone who had like empathy to the level that I have. So that's why I always thought like that must be synaesthesia. That's too like, it's too deep and too like weird to be just like empathy, I think.
Can I follow up on that? So if you would see someone being hurt on their arm, for example, and you put your own hand on it, like does it help to contain it, like it does for our own body pain?
Yeah, it depends like what kind of pain it is. If it's something I've experienced, as I said, like it's more, it can be contained. If it's not, if it's too much, then I just like, I physically collapse. It's like too much to handle, and I don't know how. And I still like, I'm 36 now, I still don't know how to do it. And that's why it was important for me to be here, because I like, if people could study it and I come up with like coping strategies, it would be like amazing. I think it would make many people's life better, because many people suffer from like an overwhelm of empathy, and especially in like today's world where we're like flooded with like news and horrible news from like around. You know, it's like it's good to have like a way to just learn to deal with it without completely retiring from the world, which I had to do last year, and it's really not what you want to do, because the more you retire, the less like then you don't know how to deal with the world anymore. You know? So you gotta like face it, but also know how to do it.
My husband Carter, in the front row here, is not a synaesthete, he's a sculptor, and sculptors hurt themselves. And oftentimes when he comes home, he'll have a bandage on his hands. All I have to do is look at the bandage and I get an orange sensation that just travels right up my spine. So I know that he's hurt and generally needs a fresh bandage. The other way that I use it is perhaps not necessarily seeing somebody's physical pain, but I'm a professor, and I've heard just about every excuse that a student's possibly offered. And I'm sure many of you have been in the same position. If a student has been absent and they miss a class and they say, my grandmother died, and I don't get that same orange that runs up my spine, I don't believe them. That's nice of them, so don't tell me.
Oh, if I could be so lucky. Yeah.
I know that people they know that I've asked this question regarding this topic a number of times before, but I'll ask it again. All right, for those with the mirror type of situation, what are you using toward a borderline or discernment between? For things like obviously fake pain, or as in like cartoons or in ludicrous zombie movies or something like that, where like a Roadrunner or Coyote cartoon, something like that, right? So somebody falls off a cliff, obviously, right? But are you going to be experiencing pain when the coyote hits the ground? So what is it that you are using to discern when that pain is not something to register?
Sure, that's a fabulous question. I don't know. I can tell you that if it's somehow pretend, fake, a stunt, I don't feel something. But there have been times in movies when I've had a physical reaction, even though I know that it's probably not real. It's like there's a disconnect between what I know and what I feel. So I'd love to answer the question, but I think it's kind of on a continuum.
I think it's also intent. Like if somebody or a group of people have an intention, like if in the real world with real people, if they are very mean things, then that's really hard, because then how do we say, it feels so unfair. Things that are unfair, or some animal or person or even plant do harm, that's unfair also with no reason. I could pass out or have to cry tremendously. It's really hard. If it's willfully harm being done. Like for example, that I can watch, I have to put it out and have to reset myself and take a cup of tea and then put the lights again on, because I can hang in the negativity and then get suicidal ideation, because it's so fucking hard in this world. And so also, like you say, meet someone who are extreme experience. in the college room was showing an article Abramovich, you know that artist, and there were a few things where she mutilated herself, and I got a massive panic attack and fainted almost, and I climbed to the director of the school, the principal, and ran to the room apart, and I never seen a hand like this. It was really seized up. It's really shit to have to cry at the most stupid place, or to faint or pass out, or and how to regulate, how to live, how to protect yourself.
I think we have to start wrapping it up. So, does anyone have a final question or perspective? Sorry, I think your hand raised first.
Yeah, I think I still struggle to kind of see the distinctions between empathy and mirror pain as, you know, a complete non-synaesthetic person. And I'm just kind of wondering if there has ever been an experience of mirror pain, but in the absence of empathy, perhaps.
Yeah, Jamie, do those two dissociate? Like, do they always correlate, or?
So you could imagine it as being kind of a different way of empathising. That would be one way of it. Some people argue that actually what you want to do in order to interact positively is to suppress your own feelings to them, so you don't share their distress. You know, so if you're a doctor or a surgeon, you don't want to feel what the other person's feeling, but you want your doctor to be empathic. So I think one is that there are multiple mechanisms of empathy. One is kind of sharing, and one is a kind of a regulation of this. So you can imagine maybe in synaesthesia that regulation mechanism has gone, or isn't working in the same way, so they're always in this kind of loop, would be one way of thinking about it. But empathy's probably got multiple kind of layers to it in terms of feeling, regulation of feeling, and all these things.
Yeah, no, I can take chair's privilege and add to that. So I can imagine I know a source of research that would be worth going to kind of as a starting point for looking at this. So there is work on outside of synaesthesia on people with extreme empathy, and I know one common way of recruiting people for this kind of research is to get people who have willingly given kidneys to strangers who they don't know and never meet. Like, who just basically sign up to be on the register going, yay, I'll give a kidney away for no reason, which I think you can all appreciate probably requires extreme empathy. So I think that would be a starting point to go to in the psychology literature for how you can start studying empathy, and then maybe using some of those same tests with people with mirror pain synaesthesia to see if there's similar things arising, and if that dissociates from their physical reports about their pain that they're experiencing. I think, Lauren, did you have something to add there? Did I see?
I was thinking maybe a question for you both in terms of how chronic pain manifests itself in people. So people who are constantly going to the doctor and being like, I have pain here, but then tests are run, all sorts of things, but nothing ever shows up. Is that empathy? Is that mirror pain? Is there any sort of paper or literature or anything that's kind of studying in that direction too?
That's a big question.
I know.
At the end of August, there's a 5-day conference in Amsterdam on pain you could go to. So pain is a biopsychosocial phenomenon. So that means that if someone is there's all sorts of reasons why someone could be experiencing pain in their body that is real without it showing up on tests. One could be that there's something wrong that doesn't show up on tests. One could be that there's some kind of that there is some kind of emotional or social or psychological problem that is giving them physical pain that is just as real. Physical pain due to psychological or social or emotional problems is just as real and just as important and just as meaningful as pain because, you know, you got stabbed in the leg. And it's tricky because you usually have to go through a primary care physician before you kind of see a pain specialist, but pain specialists understand this. And I think I'll stop there. So I could go on for a while about this.
Yeah, I bring it up too because Aurore and I were talking earlier today, and in your poster you talk a lot about burnout, and I think burnout is something that most of us associate with just emotions. But is burnout able to physicalize itself is something that I've been curious in, and so we were sharing if you don't mind me sharing.
No.
That like every 3 to 4 years, we feel we need to take a rest from just everything. And so is that emotional, or is that kind of like more of a physical thing?
It sounds very sensible to me.
That too.
Okay, I think we are actually now out of time, but hopefully this has been just the start of this conversation, and I would love to hear from, I personally would love to hear from anyone who wants to talk about it. I think all the other panelists would love to as well. And I think CC, you can easily access her email address to drop her a line and let you know what you think as well about pain synesthesia. So thank you very much everyone for attending, and thanks to our panelists.